Sarah Miller pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway of Building 7 at Naval Base Coronado. Her gray uniform blended into the background just like she did. Most people walked right past her without a second glance. That was fine with Sarah. She preferred it that way. At 52 years old, she had worked as a civilian maintenance worker on the base for 3 years now. She cleaned offices, mopped floors, and emptied trash cans. It was simple work, quiet work, the kind of work that let her mind rest after all those years of noise and chaos. She had just finished the West Wing when she heard loud voices coming from the briefing room, male voices full of confidence and laughter. Sarah recognized that sound, Navy SEALs. The base had several teams that trained here, and they always carried themselves with that special kind of swagger that came from being the best of the best. 3,800 meters, one of them shouted. That's over 2 miles, nobody makes that shot. The record holder did, another voice said. Back in 2017, a Canadian sniper hit a target at 3,540 meters. This challenge adds another 260 meters to that. Sarah stopped her cart outside the open door. She knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, but something about the conversation pulled at her. Something old and familiar. They're bringing in this fancy new rifle system, a third voice explained. The contractors want to see if it's even possible. They're offering $50,000 to anyone who can hit the target at 3,800 meters. 5 shots, 1 hit required. The room erupted in laughter. 50 grand for something impossible, the first voice said. That's just a publicity stunt. We should try it anyway, someone suggested. Show those contractors what SEALs can do. More laughter. Sarah could picture them in there, young and strong, their bodies honed by years of brutal training. She had known men like them before. Good men. Brave men. Men who sometimes forgot that strength came in different forms. She started to push her cart forward, but her wheel caught on something. The cart jerked, and her bottle of cleaning solution fell off, hitting the floor with a loud crack. The talking inside stopped. A moment later, a young SEAL appeared in the doorway. He couldn't have been more than 28, with short blonde hair and the kind of tan that came from running on the beach every morning. Oh, he said, looking down at Sarah, just the cleaning lady. Sarah bent down to pick up the bottle. Sorry for the noise. No problem. He started to turn away, then paused. Hey, were you listening to us? Sarah felt her cheeks warm. I didn't mean to, I was just passing by. The SEAL grinned and called back into the room. Guys, the cleaning lady was listening to our conversation about the shooting challenge. Several faces appeared in the doorway, all amused. You interested in marksmanship? One of them asked, his tone playful but condescending. Sarah knew she should just smile and move on. That's what she had done for 3 years, keep her head down. Don't make waves, don't draw attention. But something in their grins bothered her. Something in the way they looked at her like she was invisible, like she was nothing. I know a little about shooting, Sarah said quietly. The SEALs burst out laughing. A little, the blonde one said. Ma'am, with all due respect, this is extreme long-range precision shooting. This is sniper-level stuff. It takes years of training and skills that. I understand, Sarah interrupted. I was just saying I know a little. An older SEAL, maybe 40, stepped forward. He had a kinder face than the others, with crow's feet around his eyes. Have you ever fired a rifle, ma'am? A few times, Sarah said. Well, this is a bit different from plinking at cans in your backyard, he said gently. This is military-grade precision shooting. The target is over 2 miles away. You have to account for wind, humidity, the rotation of the earth, the Coriolis effect, Sarah said. I know. The room went quiet for a moment. Then one of the younger SEALs snorted. She knows the Coriolis effect, guys, watch out. More laughter. Sarah felt something tighten in her chest. It wasn't anger exactly. It was something older and deeper than that. When is this challenge? She asked. The blonde SEAL wiped tears from his eyes. Saturday morning, 0800 hours at the extended range facility. Why, you thinking of signing up? Maybe, Sarah said. This brought a fresh wave of amusement. The SEALs looked at each other with wide grins. Ma'am, I don't think you understand, one of them said. This is for professionals, elite shooters, not, he gestured at her cart, not civilians. The flyer said anyone could attempt it, Sarah replied. I saw it in the base newsletter. Well, technically, yes, the older SEAL admitted. Any base personnel can sign up, but— Then I'll sign up, Sarah said. The room exploded with laughter again. One SEAL was laughing so hard he had to lean against the doorframe. This I have to see, the blonde one said. Please, ma'am, please sign up. We could all use a good laugh before we show these contractors how it's done. Sarah nodded slowly. Where do I register? Range Office, Building 12, the older SEAL said. He still had that kind expression, but Sarah could see the pity in his eyes. He thought she was embarrassing herself. But ma'am, really, maybe you should. Thank you, Sarah said. She turned her cart around and headed down the hallway. Behind her, the laughter continued. She heard someone say, the cleaning lady is going to shoot at 3,800 meters. Oh man, this is going to be hilarious. Sarah kept walking, her jaw set. Her hands trembled slightly on the cart handle, but not from nervousness. It was something else. Something that had been sleeping for a long time, waking up now. That night, Sarah sat in her small apartment off base. It was a simple place, just a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen. On her mantel sat a folded American flag in a display case. Next to it was a photograph of a man in marine dress blues. Captain James Miller, her husband, gone 6 years now, killed in action in Afghanistan. Next to that photo was another one, faded and old. A younger Sarah in combat fatigues, holding a rifle. Her eyes were different then. Harder, more focused. Sarah picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in over a year. Hello, a gruff voice answered. Colonel, Sarah said. It's Sarah Miller, I need to ask a favor. The next morning, Sarah arrived at Building 12 before her shift started. The range office was small and smelled like gun oil and coffee. Behind the desk sat a crusty old Marine gunnery sergeant named Dawson. He had to be pushing 65, but the Corps had kept him on as a civilian range master. Help you? He asked without looking up from his computer. I'd like to register for the 3,800-meter challenge on Saturday, Sarah said. Now he looked up, his eyes narrowed as he studied her. You're Miller, you work maintenance. Yes, Gunny. You know what this challenge is? Yes, Gunny. He stared at her for a long moment, then something changed in his expression. Miller, Sarah Miller, wait a minute. He started typing on his computer, then stopped. What was your maiden name? Chen, Sarah Chen. Dawson's fingers froze over his keyboard. His eyes went wide. No, no way, you're not, he typed frantically now, pulling up something on his screen. Master Sergeant Sarah Chen, Marine Corps Scout Sniper, Distinguished Marksman Badge, Bronze Star with Valor, 15 confirmed kills over 1,000 meters in Iraq. He looked up at her with his mouth open. Your ghost. Sarah winced at the old call sign. I don't use that name anymore, Gunny. Holy mother of, Dawson stood up. Ma'am, begging your pardon, but what the hell are you doing pushing a mop around this base? Making a living, Sarah said simply. After James died, I just needed something quiet, something normal. Dawson sat back down heavily. Does anyone here know who you are? No, I prefer it that way. And now you're going to enter this challenge because, let me guess, some young hotshots gave you grief about it. Sarah smiled slightly, something like that. Dawson shook his head slowly, then a grin spread across his weathered face. Oh, this is going to be good. This is going to be really good. He pulled out a registration form. You still current on your rifle quals? No, I haven't fired a weapon in 3 years. The grin faded. 3 years? Ma'am, that's a long time, and this shot is extremely difficult, even for someone with your background if you're rusty. Can I use the range this week to practice? Dawson thought about it. The rifle they're using for the challenge is locked up. The contractors won't let anyone practice with it beforehand. They want it to be a fair test. What about a similar system? I might have something. Dawson rubbed his chin. There's an old M24 in the back that's similar in weight and feel. Not the same caliber and definitely not the same range capability, but it might help you shake off the rust. I'll take it. Range 7 is usually empty after 1,700 hours. I can book you in there, keep it quiet. Thank you, Gunny. As Sarah turned to leave, Dawson called out, Ma'am, are you going to tell them who you are before Saturday? Sarah paused at the door. No, I don't think I will. Dawson's grin returned. Outstanding, absolutely outstanding. For the next 4 days, Sarah followed the same routine. She worked her maintenance shift from 7 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Then she changed clothes, walked to range 7 and practiced. The first day was humbling. The rifle felt foreign in her hands, even though her muscles remembered the weight of it. She had forgotten how loud the shot was, how the recoil punched into her shoulder. Her first grouping at 800 meters would have embarrassed a new recruit. But slowly it came back. The breathing, the stillness, the way the world narrowed down to just you and the target. By the second day, she was hitting consistently at 1,000 meters. By the third day, 1,200. On Thursday evening, Gunny Dawson came out to watch her shoot. "Not bad," he said, as she hit the center mass 6 times in a row at 1,400 meters. "But Saturday's challenge is almost 3 times that distance." "I know," Sarah said, her eyes still pressed to the scope. "You can't practice at that range here. We don't have the facilities." "I know." "So you're going in cold on Saturday, hoping your skills translate." "Yes, Gunny." Dawson was quiet for a moment. "Why are you really doing this, ma'am? And don't tell me it's because some SEALs laughed at you." Sarah lowered the rifle. She looked out at the distant target, shimmering in the evening heat. "When James died, I died a little too. I put away everything I was, everything I'd trained for. I thought if I could just be normal, just be quiet and invisible, maybe the pain would stop." She turned to look at Dawson. "But it didn't stop. It just made me feel like I didn't exist at all. And this challenge. Those men looked at me like I was nothing, like I was invisible, and for a moment I saw myself through their eyes, a middle-aged woman in a gray uniform, nobody special, nobody important." She took a breath. "But I am somebody, I was somebody, and maybe it's time I remembered that." Dawson nodded slowly. "Your husband would be proud." "My husband would tell me I'm being foolish and showing off." "That too, probably," Dawson smiled, "but still proud." Friday night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the shot, 3,800 meters. She had never attempted anything close to that distance. Her longest confirmed kill had been 1,632 meters, and that had been with a different rifle system, different ammunition, in different conditions. This was going to be nearly impossible. She got up and walked to her mantel. She picked up the photo of James and studied his face. God, she missed him. Missed his laugh, his strength, his way of making her believe she could do anything. "What do you think, babe?" she whispered to the photo. "Am I crazy?" Of course he didn't answer, but in her mind she could hear his voice clearly. "You're the best shot I ever saw, Sarah. Best shot in the Corps. Show them what Ghost can do." She set the photo down and noticed the other picture. Young Sarah with her rifle. She barely recognized that woman anymore, so confident, so sure of herself. "Maybe it's time we met again," Sarah said quietly. Saturday morning arrived cold and clear. Perfect shooting weather. Sarah drove to the extended range facility on the far edge of the base. It was a massive area, stretching out into the desert, with targets set up at various extreme distances. When she arrived, there were already about 30 people gathered. Most of them were SEALs from the team she had overheard. There were also some Marine scout snipers, a few Army Rangers, and several civilian contractors in suits. And there, in the center of it all, was the rifle. It was a magnificent piece of equipment, mounted on a specialized rest, with a scope that probably cost more than Sarah's car. The blonde SEAL from Monday spotted her walking up. He elbowed his friend and pointed. "No way, the cleaning lady actually showed up." The laughter started again. Several SEALs turned to look at her, their expressions ranging from amused to incredulous. Sarah kept walking, her face calm. A man in a suit stepped forward with a clipboard. "Name." "Sarah Miller." He scanned his list. "Ah, yes, you're registered." He looked her up and down skeptically. "Have you ever fired a rifle at extended range before, ma'am?" "Once or twice," Sarah said. More laughter from the SEALs. "Well, you'll be shooting last," the man said. "We have 12 registered shooters. Each gets 5 rounds. You need to hit the target once to qualify for the prize." "I understand." Sarah walked to the back of the group and waited. The shooting began at exactly 8 o'clock. The target was so far away it was barely visible, even with binoculars. The contractors had set up spotting scopes and electronic sensors to detect hits. The first shooter was a Marine scout sniper, a young corporal with a confident stride. He took his position behind the rifle, made his adjustments, and fired 5 careful shots. "No hits," the spotter called out. The Marine stood up, shaking his head in frustration. "That's incredible distance," he muttered. The second shooter was one of the SEALs, a dark-haired man who looked like he'd been carved from granite. He studied the conditions for a long time, checking his calculations twice. His 5 shots rang out across the desert. "No hits," the spotter said again. One by one, the shooters took their turns. Army Rangers, more SEALs, even a civilian contractor who claimed to be a competitive long-range shooter. The results were the same. No hits. A few shots came close, kicking up dust near the target, but nothing connected. The blonde SEAL went 10th. Before he took his position, he glanced back at Sarah with a smirk. "Watch and learn, cleaning lady." He was good, Sarah could see that. His form was textbook perfect, his breathing controlled. He took his time with each shot, making micro-adjustments between rounds. His 4th shot came within inches of the target. The spotter called out, "Close," wind pushed it right. The SEAL adjusted and fired his final round. "No hit," the spotter announced, "but closest attempt so far." The SEAL stood up, clearly frustrated but trying to hide it behind a cocky grin. "Well, if I can't hit it, nobody can." He looked directly at Sarah. "Your turn is coming up, ma'am. Don't hurt yourself." His buddies laughed. 2 more shooters went before Sarah. Neither came close. The contractors were starting to look relieved. It seemed like their $50,000 was safe. "Last shooter," the man with the clipboard called out. "Sarah Miller." Sarah walked forward. She could feel all eyes on her. The SEALs were grinning, expecting a show. The Marines looked sympathetic. The contractors looked impatient. She knelt behind the rifle. It was heavier than what she was used to, but well-balanced. The scope was extraordinary, crystal clear even at this distance. "Ma'am, do you know how to make the adjustments?" one of the contractors asked. "Yes," Sarah said quietly. She pressed her eye to the scope and found the target. It was a white square, 3 feet on each side, marked with a black center circle. At 3,800 meters, it looked impossibly small. Sarah took a breath and began her calculations. Wind speed at ground level was 8 miles per hour from the west, but wind at the target could be different. She looked at the heat shimmer, the way the dust moved in the distance. She estimated 10 miles per hour, shifting to northwest. Temperature was 62 degrees. Humidity was low. Elevation difference between her position and the target was minimal, maybe 30 feet drop. And then there was the Coriolis effect. At this distance, the rotation of the Earth would push the bullet right by approximately 8 inches. She had to account for that. Behind her, she heard one of the SEALs whisper, "How long is she going to take? She's acting like she knows what she's doing." "Just let her waste her shots so we can go get breakfast," another replied. Sarah made her adjustments. Elevation up, windage left to compensate for both wind and Earth rotation. She settled into the rifle, letting her body relax into the position. This was familiar now, this was home. She controlled her breathing. In, out, her heartbeat slowed. The noise of the crowd faded away. There was only her, the rifle, and the target. On her exhale between heartbeats, she squeezed the trigger. The rifle boomed. The recoil pushed into her shoulder like an old friend. 3 seconds passed. At this distance, the bullet took time to travel. "Hit," the spotter screamed. "Direct hit, center mass." The crowd erupted. People shouted in disbelief. The contractors rushed to the spotting scopes to confirm. "That's impossible," the blonde SEAL yelled. "Check it again." The head contractor looked up from his scope, his face pale. "It's confirmed. Direct hit, approximately 4 inches from center." Sarah stood up from the rifle. Her hands were steady. Her face was calm. The crowd pressed in around her, everyone talking at once. "How did you?" "That was incredible." "Who are you?" Gunny Dawson pushed through the crowd. He had an enormous grin on his weathered face. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced in a voice that could carry across a parade ground, "let me introduce you to Master Sergeant Sarah Chen, retired, Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Some of you might know her by her call sign." He paused dramatically. "Ghost." The silence that followed was deafening. The older SEAL, the one with the kind eyes, went white. "Ghost, the legend from Fallujah." "I trained under someone who served with you," one of the Marines stammered. "He said you were the best he ever saw. He said you made shots that shouldn't have been possible." The blonde SEAL looked like he'd been punched in the stomach. You're Ghost, but you're the cleaning lady. Sarah met his eyes. I'm both, she said simply. One of the contractors stepped forward, still in shock. Ma'am, that was the most incredible shot I've ever witnessed. The prize money is yours, of course, but I have to ask, would you be willing to consult for us? We're developing this system for military use and having someone with your expertise. No, thank you, Sarah said politely. I'm retired. But surely. I said no. Her voice was firm but not unkind. I took this shot to prove something to myself, not to start a new career. She turned to walk away, but the blonde SEAL stepped in front of her. His face was red, his jaw tight. For a moment, Sarah thought he might say something cruel, something angry. Instead, he stood at attention and saluted her. Master Sergeant, he said, his voice thick with emotion. I apologize for my disrespect. It was an honor to witness that shot. One by one, the other SEALs came to attention and saluted. Then the Marines. Then the Rangers. Soon everyone in uniform was saluting her. Sarah, surprised, returned the salute. At ease, she said quietly. You don't need to. Yes, ma'am, we do, the older SEAL said. We were wrong about you, completely wrong. Sarah nodded, accepting their apology. Then she walked to her car, leaving the stunned crowd behind. The story should have ended there. Sarah had proven her point, earned the respect of those who had dismissed her, and won $50,000 in the process. She could have gone back to her quiet life, satisfied. But the world had other plans. By Monday morning, the video had gone viral. Someone had recorded her shot on their phone, and now it was everywhere. Mystery woman makes impossible shot. Cleaning lady defeats Navy SEALs. Ghost sniper emerges from retirement. Sarah's phone rang constantly. News organizations wanted interviews. Talk shows wanted her as a guest. The Marine Corps Public Affairs Office called, asking if she would participate in a recruiting campaign. She ignored them all. But Tuesday morning, when she arrived at work, there was a car parked outside Building 7, a black sedan with government plates. A woman in a crisp business suit stepped out. She was maybe 40, with sharp eyes and an official bearing. Master Sergeant Chen. I go by Miller now, Sarah said, and I'm retired. I know, my name is Director Patricia Hawks. I'm with the Defense Intelligence Agency. She held up credentials. I need to speak with you about a matter of national security. Sarah's instincts, honed by years of service, kicked in. This wasn't a recruiting pitch. This was serious. They sat in the car, and Director Hawks opened a classified folder. 6 months ago, there was an incident in Syria, Hawks began. A high-value target, a terrorist leader, was supposed to be eliminated by a drone strike. But at the last minute, intelligence suggested there were civilians in the building. The strike was called off. I don't see what this has to do with me, Sarah said. The target has since killed 43 people in 3 separate attacks. He's planning something bigger. We have credible intelligence that he's organizing a major operation that could kill hundreds. Hawks pulled out a photograph. We can't use a drone. He's learned to hide among civilians. We need precision. We need a sniper who can make an impossible shot. Sarah looked at the photo. A hard-faced man with dead eyes, a killer. You have plenty of snipers, Sarah said. None who can make the shot we need. The only position we can get into, the only angle we have, requires a shot of 3,200 meters in an urban environment, with wind, with civilians nearby. Hawks looked at her intently. We need Ghost. Sarah closed the folder and handed it back. No, I told you I'm retired. People will die. People always die. Send someone else. There is no one else. Hawk's voice was urgent now. You just proved you still have the skills. You just made a 3,800-meter shot after 3 years away from the rifle. You're the only one who can do this. Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. She thought of James, of the flag on her mantle, of all the sacrifices they had made. I've given enough, she said quietly. Hawks was silent for a moment. Then she pulled out another photo. This one showed a school, children playing in a courtyard. This is his target, Hawks said. An American-sponsored school in Jordan, 300 students ages 6 to 14. He's going to bomb it during a special ceremony next week. We know when, we know where, but we can't evacuate without tipping him off. He'll just change targets. She looked at Sarah with fierce intensity. You can stop him, only you. Sarah stared at the photo of the children. She saw their smiling faces, their innocence. She thought of the young SEAL who had laughed at her, of all the young men and women who served, who fought, who believed they were protecting something important. She thought of James, of his belief that some things were worth fighting for. When, Sarah asked. Hawks allowed herself a small smile. We leave tonight. The operation took 4 days to plan. Sarah was flown to a classified location where she met the team, a mix of CIA operatives and Special Forces soldiers who would provide security and support. They went over every detail. The target would be at a specific location for only a narrow window of time. The shot would have to be made from the roof of an abandoned building 3,200 meters away. Wind conditions would be difficult. There would be civilians in the area. One shot, the mission commander said. You'll have one shot. After that, his security will move him and we'll lose him. One shot is all I need, Sarah said. They inserted into the city at night. Sarah had forgotten how different combat zones felt. The tension in the air, the way every shadow could hide danger, but her training came back instantly. They reached the building and climbed to the roof. Sarah set up her rifle, a state-of-the-art system, even better than the one from the challenge. She had 2 hours to prepare before the target would appear. She used the time to study the environment, wind patterns, heat shimmer, sight lines. She calculated and recalculated, checking every variable. Her spotter was a young Army Ranger named Collins. He was good at his job, professional and calm. I saw the video, he said quietly as they waited. That shot at Coronado, that was unbelievable. This one will be harder, Sarah said. Do you ever miss? Sarah thought about that. Everyone misses sometimes. The trick is making sure it doesn't matter when you do. And if you miss today? I won't. At exactly 1400 hours, the target appeared. He walked out of a building surrounded by bodyguards, moving toward a vehicle. Target acquired, Collins said. Range 3,247 meters, wind east-northeast, 12 miles per hour, gusting to 15. Sarah could see him through her scope, the man who had killed so many, who wanted to kill children. She made her adjustments, elevated for drop, compensated for wind, accounted for the Coriolis effect. Her breathing slowed, her heartbeat steadied. The world narrowed to just her and the target. She thought of James, of the children in that school, of every person this monster had killed and would kill. Between heartbeats, she squeezed the trigger. The rifle boomed. Time seemed to stop. 3 seconds, the longest 3 seconds of Sarah's life. Then Collins' voice, tight with emotion. Hit, target down, confirmed kill. The bodyguards scattered in confusion, not knowing where the shot had come from. By the time they figured it out, Sarah and her team were already evacuating. The mission was a complete success. The terrorist leader was eliminated. The school was safe. Sarah was back in the United States 36 hours later. When she returned to her apartment, she stood in front of her mantel for a long time. She picked up the photo of James. I did it, babe, she whispered. One last mission for those kids, for you. She could almost feel him smiling. The next day, Sarah went back to work at the base. She pushed her cleaning cart down the familiar hallways, mopped the familiar floors. But something was different now. When the SEALs saw her, they stood a little straighter. They nodded respectfully. Morning, Master Sergeant, they said. The blonde SEAL stopped her in the hallway. Ma'am, I wanted to thank you again for the lesson last week. It reminded me not to make assumptions about people. Good, Sarah said. Hold on to that lesson. It might save your life someday. Later that week, Gunny Dawson found her in the break room. You hear about that terrorist leader who got killed in Syria? He asked casually. Amazing shot, they're saying. Over 3,000 meters. They're calling it one of the greatest sniper kills in history. Sarah sipped her coffee. Is that right? Funny thing, though, the sniper is classified. Nobody knows who made the shot. He looked at her knowingly. Nobody except me, probably. I don't know what you're talking about, Gunny. Dawson grinned. Course you don't, but hypothetically, if I did know who made that shot, I'd tell them that they're a true American hero, and that their husband would be incredibly proud. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. Hypothetically, that would mean a lot. That Saturday, Sarah visited the cemetery where James was buried. She sat by his headstone, pulling weeds from around the base like she did every week. I think I'm ready now, she told him. Ready to be both people, the woman who cleans floors and lives a quiet life, and the woman who can make the impossible shot when it matters. You don't have to choose between being invisible and being Ghost. You can be both. You can be Sarah. The wind rustled through the trees, and Sarah felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. On Monday morning, she submitted her resignation from the maintenance department. Director Hawks had offered her a consulting position with the DIA, teaching advanced sniper techniques, advising on long-range operations. It would be part-time, mostly classroom work. She could live her quiet life and still use her skills to make a difference. But before she left the base for the last time as a maintenance worker, she stopped by the briefing room where she had first overheard those SEALs laughing. A new group of young sailors was there, fresh-faced and cocky. One of them saw her and started to walk past, dismissing her as just another civilian worker. Sarah cleared her throat. "Excuse me." They turned, looking mildly annoyed at the interruption. "I just wanted to give you some advice," Sarah said. "In your careers, you're going to meet a lot of people. Some of them won't look like what you expect a warrior to look like. Some of them will seem ordinary or quiet or invisible." The sailors exchanged confused glances. "Don't make the mistake of underestimating them," Sarah continued, "because sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one you don't see coming." She smiled and walked away, leaving them puzzled. Outside, the California sun was bright and warm. Sarah walked to her car, her head held high. She was Sarah Miller. She was Ghost. She was a widow, a hero, a maintenance worker, and a legend. She was all of these things. And she was finally completely whole.